Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and we're going to talk about Wizards of the Coast's acquisition of D&D Beyond from Fandom, the company, and now Wizards of the Coast owns D&D Beyond, lock, stock, and barrel. And what I want to talk about today is, and this question is more important. This question always existed, okay? But it's more important than ever because D&D Beyond is likely to not go away now that it's been acquired by Dungeons & Dragons, by Wizards of the Coast, who is the creator of Dungeons & Dragons. It's a very important question. And here's the question. Does D&D Beyond suppress table play? All right? So let's talk about this question. All right, let's get to the answer to this question. Okay, so first of all, this is a big deal, all right? Let's define table play, all right? So first of all, I'm going to say it flat out. D&D Beyond online games, this gets complicated, okay? So actually, oh boy, yeah, this gets so complicated, right? So one of the things is, I just watched Metal Lords 2022, and in that movie, they show a scene where Dungeons & Dragons is played, and it's played by Gen Zs, right? And you know what they're using? There ain't a book. I actually, there were books on the table, but the DM appears to be using D&D Beyond, right? Also, just to be clear, the new Ghosts, which is it's on Paramount Plus. D&D was played on that, and it appeared that D&D Beyond was shown with what the Dungeon Master was using. Both of these at table games, okay? So D&D Beyond, without question, and actually it's used at my game, right? I have a player who makes all of his characters and does a lot of his research for my games on D&D Beyond. And by the way, I'm in one of his campaigns, and he has included me. He actually has a subscription to D&D Beyond, and he put me in as a campaign player. I am a player in his campaign. This is completely valid, use within the construction of what Dungeons & Dragons has done. But I actually have access to way more books than I ever did. I have an account on D&D Beyond that I use pretty frequently, but I don't have. The stuff I bought is one or two things at most, right? And the other thing is, it's very hard to even know what the heck you even bought on there, right? Because it's just, it's complicated. And they have different veils over what's owned on that thing. So the biggest question is, D&D Beyond is used for table games, okay? But even more than that, it's used a lot for online games, okay? And it's a facilitator for online games, right? By facilitating online games officially, right, Wizards of the Coast is now literally in the business of D&D Beyond, right? This is not some service that they got built and that they're renting from some other company and it may go away. This thing's in-house now, right? Wizards of the Coast own the D&D Beyond product, right? Which means that its shelf life just gained like 5 years minimum, right? It's going to be around for 5 years minimum. And there's a big question. People are like, wait, what's happening with D&D Beyond? Right, and is my stuff going to be there? Is it important? Actually, is my stuff going to be there? Like, I think a lot of players and DMs were like, I bought this, but I don't know if it's going to be there tomorrow, right? I feel a lot of players felt like that, and that definitely happened. There was it's already happened. There was functionality that was existent that went away. That's already happened. That's not a debatable subject. It's already happened, right? And you could say, oh, well, the scope is small or whatever you want to say, but it has happened, right? So basically, here's the question. Is Wizards of the Coast suppressing their table games, which, in my opinion, is the most important play they have, right? Yes, they get money. Yes, they get momentum from online games. But I'm going to say it flat out, the least dedicated dungeon masters, the people who care about Dungeons & Dragons the least, play online, right? Because every single one of them could go and get physical players in their area, right? And some people are like, okay, I'll throw an exception for 10%, right? But 90% of them, like if you live in Alaska or something, right? Fine, or what? Even then, I don't know. Like even then, like You can make your game every 3 months. I don't buy this line. A lot of people like to tell themselves that they have to play online. I don't believe the noise. I really don't. And I will acknowledge exceptions, but I'm talking at the 51% level. At the 51% level, I think it's very clear that D&D Beyond is suppressing table games, right? This puts Wizards of the Coast in an incredibly unusual, weird space, right? And I get so much flack for mixing religion and Dungeons and Dragons, right? But they're so close, right? So one of the things that every evangelical Christian church just went through is every evangelical Christian church, actually, the macro level, 51% of the evangelical Christian churches before March 2020, not a one of them had a live stream, right? Virtually every, like the vast majority of evangelical Christian churches, the moment March 2020 hit, they had a discussion. They're like, are we going to live stream, right? My church had it too. And they said, yes, we have to live stream, right? So I did it. I literally spun it up. And get this, a year and a half before March 2020, I said, we should start live streaming. And they were like, no, we're Christians and we hate and fear technology. So no, the answer is no, right? Like, oh my gosh, right? Like, so, just eye rolled and crawled back to my little tech corner, right? And got kicked in the virtual ribs there. Like, oh, how dare you suggest we use technology, right? Like, and we would have been set. We would have known what we were doing. But instead, in the worst possible time, we had to spin up all this new technology. And it was highly frustrating and highly problematic for me because I had to do all the work under incredible stress with very limited resources, right? So, and virtually every single evangelical Christian church in the world had to do this, right? So I did it. I did all the work. I got everything spun up, right? And I'm like, boy, this is great. We're going to be able to do this. Now people can choose what they're going to. Well, guess what? The March 2020 problem floated away, right? And everybody was like, hey, when can we kill the live stream? And I was like, what? What are you talking about? People love it. Are you out of your mind? Right? And they're like, it's stopping people from coming. And I was like, oh my gosh, geez. Wizards of the Coast is in the same business now. They got the same problem, right? They're most dedicated, they're most passionate, their best dungeon masters and players play at the table the way Gary intended. That is the deepest, richest, most robust form of the game, right? But Wizards of the Coast is now in the business of cutting its throat virtually. That's problematic. That's problematic, right? So a lot of people telling you this Wizards of the Coast acquiring D&D Beyond is good. I ain't telling you that. It's bad for a lot of reasons. And I actually think that Wizards of the Coast has a major new problem with D&D Beyond. They're now in the very direct, personal, first-hand business of killing their own golden goose, right? Virtually. And that's bad. I think it's bad. I honestly think they have to be very, very careful about D&D Beyond. Because the reality is, it serves the D&D muggles. It serves the lowest ranks of D&D DMs and players, and it is a massive threat to the people who love and care about D&D the most. And it is a massive threat to to one of the things that's really special about D&D, which is forging lifelong relationships between people. You can use the word friendship. A lot of people do. I think that's a small word. All right, and I think the relationships that come out of D&D are stronger than that, stronger than friendship. That's my opinion. What do you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.